come to this meeting and the people who organised it, because we have taken on a huge responsibility upon our shoulders, which is to defeat a government that is introducing the most right-wing reactionary policies that I've seen, certainly since Mrs. Thatcher, and in some ways worse than that. And this meeting reminds me, takes my mind back 68 years. I was then 20 years old. I was going to South Africa to learn to be a pilot. I was in a troop ship. And all we were doing in the war, we were discussing what do we want after the war, what after the war. A few of us met and we said, let's have a meeting on war aims. So I was sent off to see the colonel in charge of troops. I was an aircraftsman second class, which is the lowest rank you can be, and he was a colonel. And I saluted and said, sir, can we have a meeting on war aims? And he said, no politics in it, Benn. So I said, oh, no, of course not. So we had to go to a political meeting I've ever remembered. But one speech was made at that meeting, which I've never forgotten, and a lad, I wish I knew his name, but I don't. He got up and he said, comrades, in the 1930s we had mass unemployment. But we don't have mass unemployment in wartime. He said, if you could have full employment by killing Germans, why can't we have full employment by building hospitals, recruiting and training hospitals? It was that argument that really won the case. In 1945, people decided to apply the same application of what you do in wartime to problems of peace. If you have to do it in wartime, you must do it in peacetime. And it did build a welfare state. It was by no means perfect, for God's sake, but at the same time it did build something which is now under direct attack by a government that's going back to the idea that if it's not profitable, you can't do it. And of course most of the things that really matter aren't profitable. I mean, you don't not educate children because they can't afford to pay their teachers, although that principle is being applied to universities. You don't apply that principle to health. You say, if you need an operation, you have it, whether you're rich or poor, it's quite irrelevant. And that principle is one that is under attack. And in building our campaign, we have to unite people from right across the political spectrum and right across the country. Pensioners, students, whatever group are affected are part of our campaign. And that means we have to learn again the lesson of solidarity. During the miners' strike, when I was the MP for Chesterfield, the mining constituency, we had many public meetings, and on one of them a group of American miners came over. And they told a story to explain solidarity, which I have never forgotten because it's so significant. The American miners said there was a disused mining village in America, and a little boy fell down a pit shaft. And everyone gathered round to look down, and they heard the little boy's voice, and he said, drop a rope. So they dropped a rope, and it was too short. So they dropped another rope, and it was still too short. And they dropped a third longer rope, and it was still too short. And out of the mine shaft came the little boy's voice. He said, tie your ropes together. And that is what solidarity is about. Pensioners campaign for students. We are all in it together in this fight. And what we are doing, of course, is resisting. That's important, but it's also more than that. It's a big educational program we engage upon, explaining to people what is really happening. We've been told that, if you believe the Tory ministers, that the reason we've got a crisis is because there have been too many people on unemployment benefit who should have worked. But it wasn't that at all. It was the bankers who were lending money they didn't have to people who couldn't afford to pay it back. And this idea that it's all been due to the fact that too many people in public housing, too many people are having operations, too many people getting benefits, is a complete lie. They're using that as an excuse to dismantle what we have achieved over the years in Britain. And by resisting it, we are also acting as a major educational force, explaining to people what's happening and why, and winning their support for different policies. And that means you have to look at the whole question of the economic crisis. It is a banker's crisis. And bankers caused it, and then working people are asked to pay the price of their mistakes. And it's something which it simply has to be understood. Kate, in a brilliant speech about weapons, I mean, if I were asked to make economies, the simplest economy I could make that cost the least trouble would be to drop nuclear weapons. They've been absolutely no use to anything. To building a new generation of them, or take another level of taxation. I looked up the other day, for interest, what was the level of taxation during the war when Winston Churchill was Prime Minister? So I looked up 1945, the last year he was Prime Minister, and the level of personal taxation on the wealthiest people was 95%. They did it because we needed the money, and because they thought it was fair that everyone should share the burden. And now we're in a situation where inevitably income tax will be cut down, and people will pay the price in cuts in benefits or jobs. So that's what we're doing, and I think we're heading for a very exciting period. Maybe the police will not be so keen to attack the crowds because their jobs are at stake. I wouldn't be surprised if that thought hadn't crossed the minds of a few coppers. But at any rate, anyone who goes into this must know what they're entering and be well aware of what they're doing. And we're not looking for heroes, but there will be some people who pay a heavier price for the campaigns they're engaged in than others, and we must honour them and respect them and support them as best we can. It's done me a great honour in making me the president of the Coalition Resistance, and I am at your disposal whenever needed to try and help your campaign. Thank you.